Tell me when you're ready, Will.
All right, we're good to go.
Do you want to admit?
Everybody's in.
We're going to get started in just a moment, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just getting ready backstage. Okay, let's do it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joel Whitney. It's nice to be here with you. We're so excited here at Brooklyn Public Library virtually to be welcoming Granta for the second edition of the Best of Young Spanish Language Novelists. This is kind of a reprise of an edition that came out in 2010, doing the first of these, and we're happy to be back with some new writers and our regular host for the International Writers Series, Anderson Tepper, and you'll hear from two of the authors now in the pages of this new issue, as well as the editor. And I'm going to turn it over shortly, just a moment, to Anderson Tepper, our curator and pal for this series at the Brooklyn Public Library. I just wanted to welcome you and let you know that there are various ways that you can keep in touch with us and see what else is going on as the crazy times that we're in, where we get to bring in writers. I mean, we take advantage of these awful times that we're in we have writers and editors with us in Europe and in South America and in Oaxaca City. And we're so pleased to welcome them in a moment. I'm going to let Anderson do the honors, but you can follow our department. We do the arts and culture events, everything from a night of philosophy with the French Embassy, if you're new to BPL Presents, to these ongoing author talks, to next week we have a series continuing, a monthly series. It's a book club, and all the books are about climate change, fiction and nonfiction, every other month. And we'll be doing that next week with John Freeman, who comes from Granta's pages and comes from the masthead of Granta and has gone on to have a distinguished career. He's now also an editor, and he'll be talking with Sarah Gerard about Lauren Groff's Florida, with a VP in Florida for the Sierra Club. So it's a really quirky, fun series where you talk about books, but there's also the science of climate change and the message that climate change is real. We're also proud that we're now linked up with the Center for Brooklyn History, which used to be the Brooklyn Historical Society. And we've got amazing events, including a series about Brooklyn Resists and civil rights in Brooklyn. So join us at BPL Presents. My colleague Will is going to put some links in the chat. But as I turn it over to Anderson, please be aware that you'll have your chance to talk to these amazing young writers and Valerie at the end of this program. It's going to be streamed to Facebook, and all of that information will be in the chat. But we do want to hear from you in a bit. So start thinking about your questions as we introduce the writers and editor of Granta's Best of the Young Spanish Language Novelists, who Anderson Tepper is going to introduce right now. So Anderson, welcome back. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you for the introduction, and welcome everyone, and especially our guest. Welcome to Brooklyn and to the Brooklyn Library. It's a real honor to have you. I have to say it's an absolute thrill for me to do this program. I've been a fan of Granta's ever since I first read the magazine decades ago. And it seemed to me it always had this sort of fascinating authors from around the world that excite me. Antonio Lobo Antunes, Garcia Marquez, Kabaczynski, Amitav Ghosh, Arundhati Roy, so many more. not to mention their special Africa and India issues, the best of young British and American and Brazilian novelist issues. And of course, in 2010, their first Best of Young Spanish language novelists issue, edited by Valerie Miles, a writer, translator, and co-founder and editor of Granta en Español. And she's based in Barcelona. So thank you and welcome, Valerie. Before I introduce our two writers, I wanted to just read a quote from your introduction from the 2010 issue, where you wrote, "In 10 years' time, we will see if our choices were correct. How many of the writers in this collection will have lived up to their promise? How many of them will endure?" And it's amazing to see how many have exactly done that, right? I mean, so many writers, Alejandro Zambra, Samantha Schweblin, I mean, have gone on to write major works. So that's, that's a real credit to your list. But I want to ask, first, broadly, how are some of the ways that 10 years later, this list is quite different from that one? It's more diverse in several different ways. So tell us, these are the new issue is 25 writers born in 1985 or later. And tell how is it different from the first issue?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us and inviting me to be here. It's an absolute thrill for me to be at the Brooklyn Public Library and to be with you also, Anderson. I know so much about you and I follow you. So now it's actually really lovely to have the chance to speak with you now. And, as being kind of a rara avis of sorts, being, a strange American in Spanish, Spanish publishing and in the Spanish world, it's really nice to come home every once in a while and have the chance to kind of speak about all of the things that I'm doing and discovering from the Spanish language. My two passions in life, literature and Spanish. I can say that, yes, we were very lucky, the first issue, 2010 issue. Many of those writers did go on and made very, very important careers for themselves. There's also Andres Neumann or Andres Barba, who is now doing quite well in the United States, and Paula Oloy Sharak, or also Elvira Navarro right now is publishing in the US quite a bit. So we were a little bit, we had that same beginner's luck that Granta did with their first list in 1983, when they discovered Ishiguro and they discovered Julian Barnes and Ian McEwan and Martin Amis. So we were lucky enough to have, well, we took it very seriously. We did a lot of work. We worked very, very hard. But of course, at that time, Granta we were still establishing what Granta is, in the Spanish language, straddling back and forth. Our mission was very much to open this transatlantic conversation between Spain and Latin America, much as Granta's a transatlantic conversation between Britain and the United States, right? To kind of share the new writing and trends, but also the conversation between the more veteran writers and the younger writers. So that kind of was the outcropping of many years of establishing the magazine. So once we did that, and over the years of seeing the selection, we kind of got a little bit of street cred. We had clout, so by the time it came to doing the 2021 list, we were already established enough now to really kind of have a sense of prospecting. Many of the writers on the first list, they were not well known. Many of them are now household names, right? So we felt that we didn't have to make any kind of concessions whatsoever for this new list. We could just look for talent. We didn't have to look for people who had already emerged. If we found, we could follow our hunches, right? We could read projecting towards the future. And so that's what we did. And one of the great differences perhaps between that 2010 list and the 2021 list is many of the writers have emerged from independent houses all over. It's really a celebration of the work of the independent publishing houses that have very much cropped up over the past 10 years all over Latin America and in Spain. So, so that's one of the quite noticeable differences between the two.
Yeah, no, we'll go back to that. I want to ask both writers about their publishing experience and their literary landscape where they're from. But let me introduce them. Mateo Garcia Elizondo was born in Mexico City. He's written for film and graphic novel scripts, as well as magazines, and is the author of a novel which won the City of Barcelona Award. And Miluska Benavides was born in Lima, Peru, and she's the author of a story collection, and she's translated Arthur Rimbaud's A Season in Hell. She's in the process of completing her first novel, which I believe this story is excerpted from. So tell me, well, first I'll ask you two, where are you right now? And where are you based? And what sort of writing are you doing right now beyond the stories that were in this issue?
Go ahead, Miluska, if you want to go first.
Thank you, Mateo. Thank you. I'm very honored to join you, Anderson, Valerie, the Brooklyn Public Library. I really love New York. I lived in Colorado for 60 years. I did my PhD there, and I've been in the New York many times, so I really love the city. I think the question has your question, Anderson, has twofold answers. I'm based now in Lima. I lived in the States for 6 years. I mean, the time that took me to pursue my PhD, and then I came back here. So I'm based in Lima now. I'm planning to stay here, and I think that's part of my writing project too. I mean, to be based here as I'm working in a novel, and now I'm working. I mean, I feel and I believe that all my fiction writing process has to deal with listening, to observing, watching, to be there, like to be able to somehow be here to listen to all the noise of my place of Lima. And the sort of writing that I do, I consider that also part of the process of writing, listening to have somehow prepare an architecture of fiction. But I also do translation, so I'm also considered that a part of writing. I'm working now in some time of my free time. I'm working now. I usually translate poetry from German, from English, and I train myself as a writer, translating too. But I also consider myself as being a fiction writer, also a translator of echoes, fragments, voices that I hear around. And I think that that's also the process of being here, like physically. That is also part of the physical process of listening and then translating what I hear and what I see into some kind of text that I expect to finish now in I hope soon. Now, Mateo.
Thank you.
So thank you to the Brooklyn Library for hosting us. It's really a pleasure to be here virtually. I'm physically in Oaxaca City. I live in Mexico City most of the year, especially now that we're in a global pandemic. I've been in Mexico City, but now I'm in Oaxaca City for a very limited time. So sorry about the noise. I'm right next to the street. If there's a lot of trucks coming by, I apologize. But yeah, I live and work in Mexico City mostly. Right now, I have a grant from the Mexican government to write a novel, and that's what I'm doing right now mostly. It's kind of a family story. It has I always tend to write very dark stuff. I don't know why. I'm just like that. So it's kind of yeah. I worked a lot in cinema. That's what I wrote a lot of scripts in my 20s. I still do work in cinema from time to time, and that was sort of a university of mine. And I've always liked genre. I've always liked science fiction and horror. And that's mostly what I'm doing right now. I'm writing my next novel, which is very different from the first one, and it's an experiment for now. But yeah, that's kind of it.
So, Valerie, part of what I was getting at in your introduction, you talk about this issue being much more diverse than the one in 2010. I mean, stylistically, but also geographically, as well as we can see. The writers are from, I think you said there are 3 Cuban writers, 3 Mexican writers,
4.
a writer from Africa, Equatorial Guinea.
Yes, there's in 2010, the list had 8 countries in representation, and this list has 13. So it definitely broadened, and we added an entire continent, which is Africa, thanks to Estanislao Medina Huesca, which for us was quite a discovery, an amazing discovery, also because what's really on display in this issue is the different textures of Spanish and the different registers and the variations. You know, it's a very musical issue. And that's why I love how Miluska was talking about her work. You were listening to the noise, you were talking about listening to the echoes. You can really tell that these writers have a command of language in a way that they're using it in the fullness of all of the sonant quality of language, no? Where sometimes the sound of the word seems to me intentionally more important than the actual meaning. No, you can hear this particularly in writers like Jose Ardila, who's from Colombia, or Monica Ojeda, who's from Ecuador. And it's very interesting for us to have the opportunity to hear all those different varieties. This issue has several writers who are exploring also some of the more, like the original peoples and the kind of the more indigenous cosmographies that are, and Miluska talks about this, and it's a very interesting kind of addition that we didn't have anything like that in the other issue. And also we have writers like, even the Spanish writers, there are 6 Spanish writers. Each one of the writers, they're not coming from the centers. They're coming from the periphery of even Spain Spanish writing, right, in the sense that exactly, the Canary Islands, Irene is from Seville. We have Munir, who is also, his father is Algerian, so he's from Granada. Christina's from Granada. Right. We have, so there are a lot of, everything is very much, even in Argentina, for example, there's a lot of writing outside of Buenos Aires. The Colombian writer is not even from Bogota. He's not even from Medellin. He's from a small town, in Antioquia. So it's been really interesting for us to, and like you said, the 3 Cuban writers, there were no Cuban writers in the last issue. So this is a real new trend. It's showing kind of Cuba coming back into the conversation. And also more women writers. Yes. You about it, the younger generation of this list from the 90s, born in the 90s and 2000s, are predominantly the women writers. That's right. It was very interestingly, there were actually more women writers from who were candidates from in Spain and in Argentina. There were more women than men that sent in their candidacies. And yes, there are, the last list, there were 5 women, and this list, there are 14. And from the 1990s, the vast majority are women writers. So you can see the wave, sometimes writing takes time, right? It takes time for like to absorb kind of some of these social changes, but it's there. The wave is coming in this next generation, undoubtedly.
Yeah. Well, we were going to do a short reading, but before we jump into, I think Maluska was going to read first. One other question was, in your introduction, Valerie, you talk about what you were looking for this selection. You were looking for boldness, risk-taking, attitude, you said, writing like their life depended on it. So,
Yes.
so tell me about these two writers, Mateo and Maluska's stories, and what kind of jumped out at you, if you can, in a nutshell, kind of. And then we'll get into Maluska's reading.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the selection process, what happened is we read their work that was published, right? Cita con la Lady, which is Mateo's novel, and Maluska's book of stories.
Okay.
And then they made the kind of the pre-selection. And then from that selection, we asked each one to deliver a piece of unpublished fiction. And then they made the final selection based on the pieces that they delivered. So, but the qualities that we found in Mateo, we really, really loved the way that he approached some of his principal ideas, which is addiction. He explores addiction, but we really liked how he explores states of altered consciousness. And that's something that you can see in the piece that he wrote for the issue. That's also very much in essence. And there's almost a mystical quality to his writing that we were very, very impressed with, and like the technical side of it. Also, we thought it was really interesting. There was kind of almost a paradox between the darkness of the content of what is happening and what he's writing about addiction, and at the same time there was like a paradox in the way that he wrote and approached that, which was almost a little bit of it allows you to breathe a little bit, even despite the denseness of what's happening. With Maluska, it was very much both a blend of her like perfection to the syllable of her writing is absolutely extraordinary. And I completely believe that she is listening and hearing is very, very important to her. And we were very impressed with the quality of the writing and her very innovative structure. Yes. Because she structures her writing in very, very interesting ways. And she has one story that I particularly liked more than the rest, which is about a cycle of life that is a perfect circle. It's absolutely gorgeous writing. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
Maluska, tell us about this story in here, Kingdom. So what part of the larger novel, where does it fit into the novel, and how did you structure it? Because it jumps around between generations in the story.
Yes, I really love the description of transgenerational that I think I read in the description of the English version, that it's very accurate, because I really, I structured the novel, that specifically excerpt is part of the second section. So the first section is called Hechos, which can be translated as facts, but I was more thinking in the Acts of the Apostle, which in Spanish is Hechos. So, because it's also about a group of people that really believes. So in the second section is Kingdom. So that excerpt, it's part of the second section. So I'm really trying to, as Valerie said, trying to find ways of telling in stories that can really reflect the different layers of history. And that's part of my experience. I really feel that, and I think Mateo also shares that at Peru and Mexico, they're also particularly have a colonial deep connection. So it's a really complicated and complex relationship with history, with past history. I do feel that we inhabit the history in the present. So it's not really gone. So I'm trying to make fiction to try to establish that connection, but not a historical novel, but really as I feel it, really feeling that we are like walking, inhabiting this presence that really haunt us. And I believe that language, as language can capture those past uses, can really, you know, make us that past vivid again, and as I feel it. And in the structure, I'm really interested in those novels that really don't seem like novels, but as book of fiction. I was trying to do that in my first book, which is more like a frieze of life, as the 19th century painters like Munch and Klimt believed it was life, like a sequence of you know, of life. And now in this project, I am thinking about, for instance, Olga Tokarczuk Flights, these novels that really it doesn't seem to have a linear story, but they can really articulate past and present. And in the sense of, you know, experiencing fiction, and only the way fiction can make you experience time, right? Or different layers of time. That's, I think, the structure that I am working in.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to just work with the association. So I also read a lot of poetry, and I am always thinking how poetry works, not in a really sequence logic, but more of association. And I think there is a potential in writing stories in that kind of way to think time, not as a sequence, but more as an association. And I think fiction can, it has the possibility to make us experience that.
And so you're going to read a short passage in Spanish, and then Valerie will read it in English, and tell us where it's located. It's in a southern Peruvian mining town, is it?
The piece of fiction that I sent, it's the first section that is called San Juan de Marcona. San Juan de Marcona is an actual mining camp that is in the coast, in the south of Lima. It's coast. It's a mine that is in the coast. So the novel is articulated in a mine that is in the Andes, in the mountains, and then the second section is this mine, this actual mine. But in the story that I'm going to read, A Singular Man, is from the other side, the mountains, which is where my family is from. I live in the coast, so that's why I am very interested in blending, you know, these connections between the coast and the Andes, because that's how I felt that some kind of web that was in which I really live. So this particular piece, A Singular Man, is located in what I imagine is my mother. Well, this I should be telling this, but I will tell, is my mother's hometown, which is in near a colonial mining center. It was called Huancavelica. It's a very famous. It was a colonial. There is so kind of colonial imagination around that mine, but it's near that. So it's kind of, I try to really capture that. So it's a story. It's a second. I'm going to read the second piece that I sent from, that is an excerpt from Kingdoms.
And this character is the father of the character in the first section.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Andres. Yeah, that's I was playing with the name Mario and Juan Bautista. So this is the story of the father. Shall I start?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Un hombre singular. Mario Bautista sostuvo el sombrero a la altura de su vientre y se sumergió en la muchedumbre que caminaba hacia el cementerio, acompañando a los muertos con rezos y sollozos. El padre Karvich echó agua bendita a una fila de féretros dispuestos debajo del alto arco de piedra que enmarcaba los funerales de los jóvenes, víctimas del barranco de la curva del Aramati. Del accidente le informaron otros choferes cuando se detuvo en Canta y decidió ir al cementerio a despedirse, aunque sabía que, de vuelta a la casa de Sebastiana Narváez, le esperaría el reproche. Pero ¿cómo no ir?, le aclaró a su madre mientras le servía el caldo hirviente. ¿Y todavía te vienes acá a comer? Anda directo donde la señora, le dijo. Él no hizo caso. Había dejado el camión en la terminal sin siquiera avisar de su salida. Se unió a la larga procesión que serpenteaba por la calle empedrada, la más antigua, por donde dicen que pasó por última vez el brujo de los Andes y las montoneras durante la guerra con Chile, para desaparecer por la cordillera que se empinaba detrás del cementerio. Cuando por fin apareció en la casa de Sebastiana Narváez, las 2 hojas del portón estaban abiertas. En el centro del gran patio florecía un alto árbol de flores blancas. Sebastiana lo esperaba con la cara colorada y un fuete que solían llevar los hombres de su familia. Adela también lo guardaba, aunque prefería no hacerse ver, escondida tras uno de los pilares del patio. Decían casi todos en esa casa, con admiración y amargura, que Sebastiana gobernaba su reino sin ayuda. Tenía 2 hijos a los que había mandado a estudiar a la costa. A su hermano menor lo había destinado a una de sus haciendas venidas a menos para que se hiciera hombre. Revisó uno a uno los sacos de café que había traído de los valles, uno de los pilares de su comercio. Eso decían, y su capacidad de amarrar a los mejores choferes, mientras el resto de los comerciantes seguía contratando arrieros o neófitos, como los que se defenestraron por la curva del Aramati.
Thank you, Miluska. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Would you like me to read
Yes,
the
Valerie.
English? Okay, and I should say that this was translated by the absolutely marvelous Katie Silver, who I know she and Miluska forged a great friendship through the process of translation. She was very impressed with Miluska's writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about the translators later if we have time, because you say
Great.
that the selection process was not just for the authors, but matching the translators.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we took a lot of care with pairing the translators with the writers. Yes, and it's we have both a star-studded group of translators, but there are a few emerging translators also that we wanted to keep with the spirit of the whole project to give a chance to some translators. Okay, so a singular man. Mario Bautista held his hat in front of his belly and plunged into the crowd that was walking toward the cemetery, accompanying the dead with prayers and sobs. Father Kardich sprinkled holy water on a row of coffins placed under the high stone arch that framed the funeral of the youths, victims of the cliff at the Laramati curve. Other drivers had told him about the accident when he'd stopped in Canta, and he decided to go to the cemetery to say his goodbyes, even though he knew that when he returned to the house of Sebastiana Narváez, reproaches awaited him. "How could I not go?" he said to his mother while she served him the piping hot soup. "And still you come here to eat?" "Go straight to the señora," she told him. Bautista paid no heed. He had left the truck at the terminal without telling anybody he was leaving. Then he joined the long procession that wound through the cobblestone street, the oldest one where they say Cáceres, the brujo de los Andes, and his montoneras passed for the last time during the war with Chile, and from there disappeared into the Cordillera that rose steeply behind the cemetery. When he finally showed up at Sebastiana Narváez's house, the double gates were wide open. In the middle of the large courtyard, a tall tree with white flowers was in full bloom. Sebastiana, cheeks ablaze, was waiting for him, holding a whip that the men in her family often carried. Adela was also waiting for him, though she preferred to remain unseen, hidden behind one of the pillars in the courtyard. Everyone in the house said with admiration and bitterness that Sebastiana ruled over her kingdom without anybody's help. She had 2 sons she had sent to study on the coast. Her younger brother had been sent to one of the more rundown haciendas in order to make a man out of him. She checked each and every bag of coffee he had brought from the valleys, one of the pillars of her business. This, they said, as well as her knack for hiring the best drivers, whereas the rest of the traders kept hiring novices and muleteers like the one who drove off the cliff at the Laramati curve.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, when we get to Mateo's reading, you'll see the difference, very different writing in both of them. So I wanted to ask you both. What was your reaction to being selected for this list? And what were your thoughts about any kind of commonality between the writers, among the writers of the group? I mean, do you feel that there is a literary generation? Do you feel part of a literary generation?
Yeah, very quickly, if I may. Yeah, I'm excited to see that there's, I mean, I was trying to write into, as I was telling you earlier, I'm a big genre buff. So I was trying to write in horror and in science fiction. And it's a great pleasure to see that a lot of the writers are doing kind of the same thing. I think there's a big hole in Spanish language literature with with horror and science fiction. I mean, Mariana Enriquez is doing.
We've lost
To the other day.
Ah,
Sorry,
there
you
we
lost
go.
me.
Okay, you're back.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying that I think that I'm glad that a lot of the writers I think are doing similar stuff, like Aura Garcia Junco and Michelle Nieva. We're all kind of trying to go into those genres, which I think there's a lot of literature, of great literature in English, for instance, like in science fiction and in horror, but there's not so much in Spanish. And I'm glad to see that there's more of that kind of, yeah, playful literature going on in this new generation. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And Maluska, what about you? Do you feel connected to other writers, or do you feel that everybody is doing something quite different, or I mean, that there's no need to bunch people together, I mean, and call it a movement or a generation?
I think the list is like a picture, and I find it very plural. And I think that's how, I mean, we are sometimes when I think myself in the literary movement of Spanish, I believe that first is the language. And then, but specifically in the language, I think we all share this particularity of not thinking ourselves as, as that we have to fit. But I feel, as Mateo said, you can write in the genres you want, because now I feel that it's more the time, and that's also the phenomenon of independent, that you can write in your own terms. Now I think we have arrived to that point, and I think that's if there is a connection between all the writers in the list, is that you feel when you read that what you are reading now it's possible to write the way we want. I think 10 years ago, the independent publishing houses were not like Variety here, were not that energetic. I don't know. It just was. Now we can see more plurality, and I can say that because I come from the independent publishing scene. I come from a poetry scene, and I think it's.
Yeah, tell me about your publishing scene. Is it in Peru or?
Yes. Yeah. I published. So my book was, I don't know how to say, maybe Valerie can say that, can help me. It was no cost book. So we had a publishing house that used to publish poetry, a poetry collection. We just gave the books for free in some libraries. So I was, like this foreigner in this project, which I really love because that's my scene. I am surrounded by poets, and those are my my partners now. Like in projects, I really talk to them all the time. So that was it was very, very independent in that sense. In that we didn't even sell the books. But now, as it was like, it was just really like, we really loved that idea of the gift, and we were kind of inspired by Lewis Hyde books, The Gift, and all the idea of art being a gift. I mean, not something that you can, it's not a commodity. I mean, we have the whole project behind, this independent publishing. And I do believe that writing is also a gift until right now, even though we can, be part of a commercial circuit, but it is part of ourselves that's giving to the world. But about the independent publishing houses, I always say this, that we have now an independent publishing houses that publish what we call First Nation people languages. I mean, Quechua's writing in Peru is such now we have fiction written in Quechua. And yesterday I was talking to a poet that is writing, her name is Dina Nanco, she's writing in One Piece, it's an Amazonian language. And we were talking about, creating a readability. She's publishing her book both in One Piece and in Spanish. We were talking about how to make readable the Spanish. And, this is only possible now. I think 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was almost impossible to read writers from First Nation people, or what we call indigenous people, in their own language. So it's now changing the whole scene, and I think that's the more interesting. And I will always say poetry is also the most interesting scene in Peru, because it's just our tradition in poetry is very strong. So I think I will say that.
And is your Spanish influenced by these other languages, these other First Nation languages? Valerie was saying your Spanish is quite different from, say, Mateo's.
Yeah, I think we are all affected by, any local Spanish in any country is definitely affected by the indigenous languages. In my case, my family is from the Andes. My grandparents, they talk Quechua. I didn't know the language until some years ago that I'm reading. So I'm kind of was interesting to make more sense about those silences that I found in my family. And not that for me, it was very normal, to have some diets that were different from the rest, and then when you go outside, you see, okay, so this is not like everybody else. And then you start to, to make some sense in other. So I started to learn Quechua and read these writers, these fiction writers that write in Quechua, and many things made more sense to me, even in as a writer, in my intellectual processes too. So I think learning the language is also was, entering through a window of another world. And I feel that in my country, we inhabit different worlds. It's just one nation with different communities. And I guess the opportunity for these new writers, young writers that can express in their own languages is just, it's a historical phenomenon that I feel very lucky to be living and observing and talking to them. I really feel very blessed in that sense.
Mm. And Mateo, before you do your short reading from Capsule, just tell us kind of your publishing history in Mexico. I know you've written for graphic novels as well. And what kind of, is your Spanish different in any way, or what different flavor do you think you bring to the Spanish language?
Thank you. And yes, I think I love the Mexican Spanish language. I think it's a very playful, very ironic. I don't know. It has language is always the doorway into the writing, and I think it's great. Picking up a little bit on what Miluska and Valerie said in her intro, it's new that you can use the Mexican language in the fiction itself, not necessarily just in the dialogue and for me, for instance, in the novel that I published, in Una Cita con la Lady, I don't think I could have written that novel if I hadn't written it through the Mexican Spanish language. There's something very Mexican about it, and I don't think that novel could have been built in another language in a certain sense. Maybe in Capsula it's a little bit more conservative, maybe, but in that sense. But I do think I love the Mexican gist. And yeah, I've written mostly, like you said, I've written a lot of scripts and scripts for graphic novels. And what I really loved about really going into fiction was the access you have to the internal dialogue and the internal worlds of of the characters. And I think, yeah, that's where the language plays a big part for me, and it helps me build the stories. And yeah, I think that's like Miluska said, it's a great time to be a Latin American writer, because you have that freedom now. And when I published the novel with Anagrama, there was a lot of openness to that. I was expecting that, you know, a Spanish publishing house would have more quibbles with the sort of Mexican Spanish, and that was not at all the case. And I was glad to discover that.
Great. Do you want to read from Capsule and tell us, you know, what the setting is, so everyone knows it's in outer space?
Sure.
And then if we have time, Valerie will read in English, and then if we have time, we'll take questions. So send some questions to the chat if you'd like. But yeah, Capsule.
Yeah, so my story, it's a science fiction story. It's also a prison story. And yeah, it was basically, I wanted to write a science fiction, a prison story where escaping by any physical means was impossible. So the character would have to look for other means of escape. That was more or less the game I was playing with Capsula. And yeah, I could go on, but I might as well just read to you. If you're okay with that.
Yep.
So I'll be reading from the first couple of paragraphs from the story. Cápsula. Hace algún tiempo me arrestaron y me juzgaron por 3 cargos de homicidio doloso. La historia de cómo sucedió eso no tiene nada del otro mundo. Yo era dueño de una empresa de contratistas inmobiliarios. Un día llegaron estos tipos con una compañía fantasma y un terreno a su nombre y me embarcaron en un trabajo que parecía de ensueño y por el cual terminé endeudándome a mí, a mi empresa y a toda mi familia. Cuando se desaparecieron con los préstamos que me había dado el banco, juré que los iba a encontrar. Anduve un rato buscándolos y al cabo de un tiempo los encontré y los cité en un estacionamiento para pedirles mi dinero. Como no quisieron dármelo y por encima empezaron a soltar amenazas contra mi esposa y mi hija, pues los apuñalé con un cuchillo muy filoso y puntiagudo que tenía para irme de casa. Y ya encajado lo anduve removiendo para asegurarme de tasajearlos bien por dentro y que no se me fueran a despertar en algún hospital. Siguiendo ese método, el que más trabajo me costó, con 2 piquetes lo despaché. Así lo conté en el tribunal, mientras todos los ciudadanos, muy propios ellos, me miraban con sus ojos saltones y sus expresiones de pavor y desconcierto. No parecían entender que no tenía otra opción, o lo que habría significado para mi mujer y mi pobre hija estar endeudadas el resto de sus vidas por esas cantidades de dinero. Con 3 de los 4 socios titulares muertos, se declara situación extraordinaria y entra el seguro a cubrir la deuda. Puede que yo me haya metido en un enredo legal, sí, pero por lo menos mi esposa e hija pueden seguir sus vidas tranquilas. Así que si me preguntan si me arrepiento de lo que hice, con toda honestidad tendría que contestar que no. No me remuerda en lo más mínimo la conciencia.
Mateo.
Okay.
That's the first 2 paragraphs.
So should I read it in English? Okay. Yes, I love this story. I really I adore it. I think it's wonderful, especially because the part we're reading the setup, right? But it's like horror with a really sweet character. No, Policarpo is a very funny, the pet, the vegetable pet. But it's amazing because it's horror, and but it's also sublime. It's an experience of the sublime. No, when subject and object meld, it's almost mystical. When the character meets the universe. No, yeah. and has a
it's
first.
What I like to call. It's what I like to call psychedelic horror.
Face to face with the void, right?
Exactly. Psychedelic horror is fantastic. Okay, so Capsule, and I have to say this was translated by Robin Myers, expertly, marvelously translated by Robin Myers. She did a fantastic job, and she was already working with Matteo before on his other work. So here we go. Some time ago, I got arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. There's nothing special about it, how it happened. I used to own a real estate contracting business. Some guys showed up one day with a front company and a plot of land in their name. They roped me into a dream project that ended up saddling me, my business, and my entire family with debt. When they ran off with the loan money I'd taken out from the bank, I swore I'd find them. I searched for a while, and when I finally tracked them down, I arranged to meet them in a parking lot to get my money back. Not only did they refuse to hand it over, but they also started threatening my wife and daughter. So I stabbed them with this really long hunting knife I had. And once the blade was all the way in, I jiggled it around to make sure their innards would be properly scrambled and they wouldn't wake up on me in some hospital. It took me 2 thrusts to finish off the one who gave me the most trouble. That's how I told the story in court. My audience of respectable citizens widening their eyes in fear and horror. They didn't seem to get that I didn't have much of a choice, or what it would have meant for my wife and daughter to spend the rest of their lives owing that kind of money. With 3 or 4 of the shareholding partners dead, the circumstances are officially classified as extraordinary, and the insurance company comes in to cover the debt. I may have got myself into a legal mess, sure, but at least my wife and kid can carry on their lives in peace. So if you ask me if I regret what I did, in all honesty, I'd have to say no. It doesn't weigh on my conscience one bit.
So
Thank you, Valerie.
So he's sent up into space and he's just orbiting around space. So tell me, Matteo, I mean, what else did you want to say about torture, exile? I mean, what else did you want to talk about with this story and using satire and other ways of approaching it?
I suppose it was more life I wanted to talk about. I think the situation that this character is in is very similar to what we go through in daily human existence. I mean, we're all kind of trapped inside a capsule and hurtling through the void and trying to find meaning and sense in just hurtling through the void without any sense. So that was kind of what I was trying to play with. I think also the fact that this character was going to, at some point in the story, this character was going to have to escape not just the physical boundaries of the capsule, but the character was going to have to escape sort of the bounds of reality. And I think that's what we do as readers and as writers is try to escape the bounds of this reality that keeps us, locked in a very limited experience. And I think that was kind of the whole albur, the whole double meaning of the story that I was trying to play with, sort of.
Yeah. So it is science fiction, and Valerie, in your introduction, you say one of the influences on writers that you found was Bolaño, of course, the shadow of Bolaño, but also Philip K. Dick, and also maybe surprisingly Sylvia Plath in several of the writers. Mm-hmm. So tell me, both of you, who were some of the other influences, writer influences on you?
For me, very quickly, it was a lot of Philip K. Dick. I really love how Philip K. Dick plays with the consciousness in general in his stories. And also Kurt Vonnegut. I really love the way Kurt Vonnegut kind of treats very horrible situations with a lot of humor. And I think when you stare at the void for a really long time and it's very terrifying, but you keep staring at it, it becomes kind of funny after a while. And I think Kurt Vonnegut does that great. And yeah, those were two big influences of mine for this story. Also, of course, David Bowie, kind of, and for the more prison side, I'm a very big fan of Edgar Allan Poe, and I think the Pitch and the Pendulum was kind of a very model story for this one in a sense, and there are others, but yeah, basically.
Miluska, you mentioned Olga Tokarczuk.
Yes, I've been reading her in these years, but I'm also, well, I have always loved the Russians, and by the Russians I mean Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. So I really like big books, and I'm also reading Elena Ferrante. I'm a very big fan of Elena Ferrante. I like the Italians a lot, and Natalia Ginzburg, Carlo Ginzburg's mother. She's absolutely master. But in this project specifically, I'm reading. I'm also Svetlana Alexievich. You know, that idea of blending voices with fiction. It really, but also breaking the rules of fiction, because those fixed rules, they come from the 19th century writers that I love. And so, what about breaking them? So I'm thinking about the contemporary, let's say, women writers. In the case of Peru, I'm reading a lot, and I'm studying Jose Maria Arguedas. He's a Peruvian writer, and he also wrote both in Spanish and Quechua. He was the first one, like, to introduce this whole world, and also breaking genres. I think he's not that well translated, and I think he deserves. I think now we can read him more than 50 years ago. His work is now more readable. But talking about films, I am really interested about what absolutely poets can do this, but I don't think we fiction writers can. It's to perform or dramatize silence. I'm kind of obsessed with that idea in these last few months. And I think about this dead time of Bresson's movies and Tarkovsky movies, is how you can picture, like, you can make silence with a picture. But I'm also wondering how we can, like, perform silence in fiction. And I think all the noise is just, the other side is silence. And by silence, I mean, as Mateo said, the void of the cosmos, the presence of a plant. It's just, I'm really, would like to find some ways in other arts how we can really, from fiction, take. And I think the case of Rilke, the poetry of Rilke, has been key in my work of objects and silence, and how there are presences, they're just in nature, how we can just how can I say this? In narrative, you always have a voice. But what about, rendering this presence, suspending your presence of commanding that presence? So that has been some kind of my questions lately. And I guess when we have a project, we read what we really would like to capture. And I'm also a big fan of Bowie, Mateo. I love him.
Well,
We are all.
I'm just interested about your novel, Kingdom. I'm really curious to read it, and hope it'll be translated and come out here in the US.
Oh, thank you, Anderson. I'm really for me, the problem for me is it takes me a lot of time, because I think I make a lot of questions now to make things, but I also love, and I will also say hello to Katie now, because Katie is the translator of Kingdom. I really love her work too, and I really that Valerie was saying.
Very far along in it, or are you in an early draft, or?
I'm planning to finish next year. Fortunately, I already took the decision to just focus on the novel,
Yeah.
Because I think Mateo also might believe that pandemics has affected in all different levels, personal level, work level, is that I feel that I had to come back and take care of my parents and to take care of and also to, engage in more in a lot of, the problem of being in a big city is that you have many, like around everything is just, you get very engaged with a lot of things, which I love. So I'm planning to finish next week. And I'm really, thank you, Anderson and Valerie and Mateo for this conversation around this novel. Now it's like, I feel more pressure, to go and write.
Get it done. And Mateo, is your novel being translated? Did you say that, or?
Robin and I started translating it. We have a sample, and we're looking to publish it, but there's still, I don't know if there are any takers in the audience. We're looking, but we have a sample, and I've loved working with Robin. Robin is really good at rendering the voices of the characters, and I think it's gonna do good in English once it comes out. So hopefully it will soon.
Well, I'm looking forward to that too, Mateo. Well,
and I just wanted to add that I read Robin's poetry in Peru. She's in Spanish in Spanish translated. That's how I met her work, and when I knew that she was also a translator, I was really excited. She's also a great poet.
I think we only have one question here before we go, and it's really to Valerie. I don't want to forget all the names of the writers you've mentioned. Will you provide a list of these authors? I don't know if a list is possible, but do you want to just mention some of the other writers? We were supposed to have Monica Ojeda with us today, who's an Ecuadorian writer who wasn't able to make it at the last minute. But who are some of the other writers
on this 2021 list?
Yeah.
Sure, I can read the names. We have Andrea Abreu, who is from Spain. She's from the Canary Islands. Jose Adiac Montoya, who's from Nicaragua, although he also lives in Mexico City. And he was translated by Samantha Schnee. David Aliaga, who's from Spain. He's in Barcelona. Carlos Manuel Alvarez, who's one of the Cuban writers. Jose Ardila, who's from Colombia. He's the Colombian writer. Gonzalo Bath, who's from Uruguay, and Miluska, of course. Martin Felipe Castagnet, who is from Argentina. Andrea Chapela, who is from Mexico. Camila Fabri, who's from Argentina. Paulina Flores, who is from Chile. Carlos Fonseca, who is from Costa Rica and also Puerto Rico. Mateo García Elizondo. Aura García Junco, who is from Mexico. Munir Hashemi, who is from Spain. Danairis Machado Bento, who's from Cuba. Estanislao Medina Huesca, who's our writer from Equatorial Guinea. Cristina Morales, who's from Spain. Alejandro Morellón, who's also from Spain. Michel Nieva, who's from Argentina, and he also lives in New York. He's studying a PhD right now at NYU. Yudris Planche Sabon, who's from Cuba. Irene Reyes Nogarol, who's from Spain, who's the one from Sevilla. Aniela, and Irene is the youngest on the list. She was born in 1997.
I was going to ask who the youngest.
1997. And I always say it's very funny because between Irene, who's the youngest, and the oldest, there are a couple from 85, which is the cutoff year. Okay, she's 23, they're 35. So there's 12 years difference between them. And that's half of her life. Yeah. I mean, that's just amazing when you think about it. It's absolutely amazing. That's how young we're talking. So Aniela Rodriguez, who's from Mexico, and finally Diego Zúñiga, who's from Chile. So those are the 25 writers.
And you increased the number of writers from the last issue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. This is the thing, we had an absolutely privileged jury with Gabby Wood, Chloe Arigis, Rodrigo Fresan, Horacio Castellanos Moya, Aurelio Major, and of course I chaired the jury. We were planning on 20. Our idea was, we did 22 in the first list, but let's really, we're not trying to say these are good writers, but, these are all of the good writers who are writing. We're trying to make a selection. And we're trying to do this, put together this like music of chance thing, what's happening now, what is, and I in the introduction, I say it's like a Ouija board, you're kind of going around as and the thing stops, the planchette stops at yes and no, or it spells a word. And if we would have had to stay at 20 writers, there might have been blood. Because of course we all had to make concessions, right?
Yeah.
There were writers that I really wanted on the list, that you have to make concessions, but we couldn't go below 25. Really, it would have been impossible. It would have at 25 was the point when we could all be very happy with the work that we did. So, you can say in this list, not all of the great writers are on it. There are a lot of writers that could have been on the list and that aren't, but we had to stop somewhere. But we are very, very pleased with the writers that are on the list. We think we did not only did we do a good job, it's just that there's really an extraordinary group of writers writing today. It is seriously, something's, happened where it's as if now, Miluska said it really well, we're allowed to write from us, from where we are now. It's as if there's no more complexes. You don't have to be from the big cities. You don't have to be in the center. You don't have to have like the proper schooling. You don't have to have that grade from here. You don't have to go to Paris. I can write about my own things from where I am. And as a result, there's like a lot of storytelling from places that perhaps we didn't know anything about, or, kind of new things coming up, these registers that are happening where language is very, very like the richness and the varieties of Spanish are just like really flowing and showing themselves like a peacock, and it's really an extraordinary moment for writing in the Spanish. Yeah.
I agree, and thank you so much, Valerie. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your works, reading them in the future, the way we've been reading the ones from 10 years ago. So thank
Great.
you, Miluska. Thank you, Mateo. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you, Valerie. And good luck with the issue.
Thank you.
Thank
Encourage
you.
everyone to get it.
Thank you, Andy, for having us.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having
It's such a pleasure to be here.
A real pleasure. Okay, Joel, are you?
I've got nothing to add. It was so nice to hear all of you think and talk and speak and read. And from Brooklyn Public Library, thanks for being with us. We can't wait till we can be together in person. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you, Joel. It was lovely to see you.
Okay. Bye-bye, Valerie.
Bye, Valerie. Bye, Andy.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye,
for having
Miluska.
us.
Bye,
Thank
Mateo.
you.
Thank
Be
you,
well.
Andy. It was so
Thank
great.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andy.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
Mateo.
Thanks for everything.